With the beginning of the new era of the Five Nights at Freddy's lore a few years ago came a new addition to the quite limited overarching villain roster of the franchise. The Mimic. While this character might seem like a weird addition to the franchise for some, I've got proof that even if it wasn't initially planned, the Mimic has been lurking in the dark past of Fazbear Entertainment since the start. And that the specific Mimic Endo we see in Security Breach Ruin witnessed one of the most important events in the franchise happen right before its eyes, and it's that singular event that caused it to be so violent and also what caused the Mimic Owen program to have an intensive fixation on William Afton. Today, I'm going to explain not only the history of the Mimic and the distinction between the Endo and the computer program, but why the Mimic is imitating serial killer William Afton, what caused the Mimic Owen program to be so violent, and what caused everything in the Mimic saga to happen in the first place. And there's an extremely important piece of evidence to make everything fit right into place. I'm WitheredCircle, and I'm here to tell you that you're probably wrong about the Mimic. Hey theorists, Withered here. I wanted to remind all of you that today's theory might be a bit controversial and might not match up to your personal beliefs, and that's okay. If you do end up commenting, which I'd be very grateful for, please remember to be respectful, as even though I understand you might be frustrated if I disagree with you, it's not nice reading comments that are just disrespectful because of a difference in opinion. I appreciate all of you commenters, however, and want you to remember that I read every comment you people make, even if I don't respond to it. Anyway, back to the video, and remember that it's just a theory. Before we delve into specifics, the Mimic is one of the most misunderstood characters by the community, and I think it's fair to explain what it is, its story, and its connection to the general lore of FNAF. This video is chaptered if you don't want to listen to the recap, although I do recommend you do, just to refresh your memory. We got our first ever look at what is called the Mimic Owen program in the Tales from the Pizzaplex story, The Storyteller from the 5th Tales from the Pizzaplex book. In this novella, the CEO of Fazbear Entertainment, Mr. Burrows, decides to fire most of its creative team and replaces it with an AI that generates stories for the Pizzaplex. As expected, the AI sucks, and makes the Glamrock's extremely childish and volatile, generates complete slop, and causes a lot of problems for the Pizzaplex. Eventually, Edwin Murray, the lead of the creative team, decides to put an end to the program, sneaking into the central unit for the Storyteller, a baobab tree in the middle of the Pizzaplex, and attempting to disable it. It's when he's inside the tree that he realizes it's running a program called Mimic 01. Shocked and apparently reduced to a state of sheer uncontrollable panic, Edwin desperately tries to stop the program from causing any more harm, but ends up dying inside the tree, presumably of asphyxiation, surrounded by scribbled notes of the words "I'm sorry" scribbled on them over and over again. But what is the Mimic 01 program? Where did it come from and who created it? Get the answers to these questions and more in The Mimic, a novella from the 6th Tales book. This one is set decades before the Storyteller, around the late 70s, and follows a younger Edwin and his life with his son David. Edwin's wife died giving birth to David, and now the pair lives alone in an abandoned factory, where Edwin is hired to work for a company called Fazbear Entertainment, developing animatronics and mascot technology for their pizzerias. Eventually, he comes to realize that David needs some kind of socialization with someone else like a playmate, so instead of the normal option of finding him a friend on the playground, Edwin decides to build a robot endoskeleton designed to imitate anything it sees, which he calls Mimic. The program used for this endoskeleton is dubbed Mimic 01, and it works perfectly. It imitates David and even seems to gain some sentience, with the two developing a secret language and playing together. Now that Edwin can focus on his work, he pays less attention to David. However, since it's important to not neglect your child, he fails to notice his son running out into the street until it's too late. David dies in a car accident, and Edwin is left grieving. Eventually, he sees the Mimic in a corner of his workshop, still doing the things David would do in life, expecting its playmate to come back. Furious, he beats the Mimic into robotic pulp and leaves it to rot in the factory before disappearing. This is likely what happens before the upcoming Secret of the Mimic game coming next year, and we have yet to see what happens there. But after the story, it's pretty obvious that Fazbear Entertainment and its two co-founders managed to get their hands on the Mimic 01 code and possibly the original Endo. It's not out of the question that some of the Fazbear mascots might have the Mimic program in them. In FNAF 3's vintage training tapes, a phone guy explains that when they're in animatronic mode, the Springlock suits are attracted to sound, so that they never stray away from the party area, and this is why Springtrap follows the audio cues even though he knows exactly where you are. Throughout Help Wanted and Security Breach, we see many instances of the phrase "it is drawn to sound" almost definitely referring to the Mimic, since I believe Help Wanted's glitch trap virus is a strain of the Mimic code. More on this later, and since the posted room where the messages found in Security Breach has connection to the underground of the Pizzaplex, where we find the Mimic in the Ruin DLC. It's also mentioned that Mimic Model 1 and 2 endos can fit perfectly into any mascot suit by expanding or contracting their skeletal structure, also making them perfect for use in Springlock suits and the Freddy Fazbear mascot costumes. So if the Mimic 01 code was a regularly used thing by Fazbear Entertainment in the 80s when the company was at its peak, it figures that they'd continue to use it in the future during the events of the Storyteller. However, there's an event that happens early on in Fazbear's history that causes every single endo running the Mimic program to be decommissioned. In the Tales epilogues, namely in epilogue number 4, the main character Lucia finds a Fazbear manual for Mimic endos and their respective programming. In the manual, it's mentioned that all Mimics must be turned off on site by employees, but not only that. It's also revealed that after one Mimic saw something it shouldn't have, the entire wave started acting strangely and in unexpected ways. It's likely this event was the catalyst for the strange behavior of the Mimic 1 program in the future, like in Glitchtrap. So what could this event be? Before I explain what I think the mysterious event that caused the shutdown of the Mimic 1 line of endos is, I should probably explain why I think Glitchtrap, the Afton virus that originated in Help Wanted and spread to AR and Security Breach, is actually the Mimic 1 code imitating William Afton and not actually our favorite purple scumbag. Help Wanted's hidden tapes make it pretty clear that Glitchtrap only appeared after a certain set of circuit boards intended to make programming faster were scanned into the game. While some think that these circuit boards come from the charred Spring Bonnie suit post FNAF 6, there are 3 things that make this statement impossible, or at least highly unlikely. Well, if you think about it, there's 4, but one of them requires you to believe the books are in the same continuity as the games, but I'll go over all of them anyway. The first reason is that Spring Bonnie doesn't really need circuit boards. This is a suit that works with hydraulics like a real animatronic, and as we discussed earlier, it being drawn to sound likely comes from the programming of the Mimic endos. Thus, there being an old circuit board, especially one with still usable programming on a Springlock suit, is extremely unlikely. The second flaw of this idea is very simple. How could Fazbear Entertainment possibly use that hypothetical circuit board after it went through 40 years of damage, including a catastrophic system failure that would probably jam it into Afton's corpse, 2 fires, and later a complete collapse of an entire building on top of it? If any of you have handled a circuit board, you know that making it a tiny bit too hot could make it completely unusable, especially if it's a circuit board from the 1980s or even 70s. How could a circuit board still be usable, and why would it contain Afton's essence? The third is also quite straightforward. Throughout Security Breach, it's made extremely clear that no one, not even the higher-ups at Fazbear, know that the corpse of company founder William Afton is under the building. The only ones who know about the sinkhole are Vanessa, Glitchtrap, and possibly Gregory, and by extension Glamrock Freddy. How could Fazbear salvage the parts from the burned scrap-wrapped suit if they don't even know where it is? And finally, the flaw that relies on the books, but is by far the most important of all. Afton and his Spring Bonnie suit wouldn't be under the Pizzaplex after FNAF 6. In Fazbear Frights and its novellas, William gets taken to a hospital and later dies next to a Fazbear Entertainment distribution center. I personally believe that both Frights, Stitcher Stingers, and their connected stories and the Tales novellas are in the same continuity as the games, for reasons I can explain another day. But even if you don't, the evidence I brought up earlier should be enough. So if these circuit boards can't possibly be William, then they're almost definitely Mimic boards. Not only does Edwin use circuit boards to create the first Mimic in the Mimic novella, but the way Glitchtrap acts isn't the way a person would. In the Princess Quest minigame from the mobile port of Help Wanted, the giant Glitchtrap entity says, "I always come back, let me out," which feels like the Mimic imitating Afton's catchphrase and not something an actual human would say. One of the lines Glitchtrap has while in the lobby is, "Hello, can you hear me?" which is something the Tape Girl, the game tester who scatters the Glitchtrap infected tapes, says in some of the audio files she has recorded. This thing is imitating people. This is a faulty line of Mimic code, the same line of code that went awry after a Mimic endo saw something it shouldn't have. I've believed Glitch Mimic, which is the name theorists give to this practically confirmed theory, for a while now, but I always had a tough time justifying why this Mimic code chose to imitate Afton specifically. I tried to pin it down to Springtrap appearing in the FNAF 3 level of the game, but that wasn't really Afton. It didn't feel right. It's only now that I finally know the answer, and it all boils down to what the Mimic saw. What did it see? After all, that detail from the epilogues feels like it's trying to tell something important, and isn't just a throwaway line. Well, let's roll with the presumption that Mimic endos were used by the time Phone Guy records his FNAF 3 tapes, because of the explanations both he and the epilogues give us. In the tapes, he mentions both the Freddy Fazbear's Pizza mascot and the Fredbear's Family Diner Springlock suits. So that means the tapes are from 1983, when Fazbear Entertainment opened Freddy's and Fredbear's was still open, right? Wrong. These tapes are being recorded from Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, and while they're being recorded, an employee at a Freddy sister location gets spring-locked, which causes the entire wave of spring-lock suits to get decommissioned. And in the Night 5 tape from FNAF 3, Phone Guy says the following.
This is just a reminder of company policy concerning the safe room. The safe room is reserved for equipment and or other property not being currently used and as a backup safety location for employees only. This is not a break room. Should not be considered a place for employees to hide and or congregate, and under no circumstance should a customer ever be taken into this room and out of the main show area. Management has also been made aware that the Spring Bonnie animatronic has been noticeably moved, and would like to remind employees that this costume is not safe to wear under any circumstances. Thank you, and remember to smile. You are the face of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza.
The mention of a Springlock failure at a sister location, Freddy's having the Fredbear's costumes, and Spring Bonnie having been noticeably moved makes it pretty clear that these tapes are being recorded in the year 1985. The Springlock suits weren't retired after the Bite of 83 because what happened there wasn't a Springlock failure. The way Springlocks work is that when they're in suit mode, these sharp plastic and metal pieces are stuck to the sides of the costume, and when shaken a lot or when a switch is turned, they snap into place to activate animatronic mode. Fredbear was already functioning as an animatronic in the scene of the Bite of 83. The Springlocks are already in place inside him, so what what actually happened there is just a buildup of pressure as he tried to close his mouth, but couldn't because crying child was in the way. So if it wasn't the spring locks that caused the accident, Fazbear Entertainment was free to use them in any way they wanted to, up until 1985. But what does this all have to do with the Mimic? Well, if the Mimic endos were used in the 1980s and were still in use in 1985 for the spring lock's advanced functions like being drawn to sound, that means that whatever it is the Mimic saw had to take place after these tapes were recorded. And I know what that thing is, but you're gonna have to hear me out. We know that on June 26 of 1985, William Afton killed 5 or possibly even 6 children in a back room, before stuffing 5 of them into the Freddy's mascots and Fredbear. This is what Phone Guy is referring to when he says the Bonnie suit was noticeably moved. It's William using it for the missing children incident. In a Give Gifts, Give Life minigame, the puppet is shown connecting the spirits of the MCI kids to their respective animatronics in a small confined room. And in the week before, and even in FNAF 1, it's shown to us that the animatronics stuffed dead night guards into suits kept in parts in service. So what if the place where William stuffed the kids was in parts in service? In the latest mainline game, Into the Pit, which we know takes place in a recreation of the 1985 pizzeria, parts in service is located in the backstage, as we can see from the animatronic parts and tools. This room is not only the perfect place for William to kill and stuff the kids, but also lines up with the square shape of the Give Gifts room. If William killed the kids in the party room we see on the other side of the pizzeria, then moved them behind the stage where he could stuff them, chances are one of the endos there could see him do it. And as we covered earlier, this endo would have the Mimic program in it. I'm not saying the Mimic saw Afton kill the kids, rather that it saw him stuff them into the costumes, explaining why it fixated on him, and when the final level of Help Wanted ends with Glitchtrap luring you into the backstage and stuffing you into a Freddy costume. Because it saw the stuffing of the kids. This is also supported by the Tiger Rock novella from Tales, where the main character notes that Tiger Rock was a digital variant of the Mimic, acts like he's seen some kind of hide-and-seek game before, and Afton hiding the kids before the police try to seek them is a perfect way to describe this. And there's one final piece of evidence that might be the nail in the coffin for this theory. This scene created by 5 staff bots in Security Breach, a perfect recreation of Give Gifts, Give Life, which itself is a representation of the stuffing of the MCI kids and later their connection to the animatronics. Something that a Mimic would have seen and projected onto his behavior with how it constantly uses suits both in Ruin and in the books, its obsession with William, how it stuffs the player in Help Wanted, and so on, and the world around it. But pouring these memories onto the staff bots as we've seen it do with the Nightmarion staff bots. The Mimic seeing the stuffing explains why the Mimic line of endos was recalled, explains why it fixated on William and its connection to costumes, without making it seeing the MCI the sole reason that it's violent, since I do believe Edwin beating it up in the Mimic novella is a key factor to its aggression. Thanks for watching. I haven't talked about the modern era in 2 months by now, and I rarely talk about it anyway, so I wanted to yap a little bit about the Mimic and the new FNAF games just so I could get my thoughts out there. Please consider liking, subscribing, but most importantly commenting your opinion on this theory. Yet again, thanks for watching, and remember, keep on theorizing and never stop overthinking. This has been WitheredCircle, the Midnight Theorist.